ever since.
I knew he had the potential. I didn't think he was going to be where he is today.
Something about him, just the way he played.
You know, he coming to the league, I was like, man, let's see what this is about.
LeBron had grown 5 or 6 inches.
I watched him, I'm like...
When LeBron James first entered the NBA conversation, the noise around him was already overwhelming. Cameras followed him everywhere he went. Every workout, every game, every appearance suddenly felt like an event. Sports shows debated his future daily, magazines put him on covers, and headlines were already crowning him the next face of basketball before he had even played a single professional minute. The hype was loud, almost unbelievably loud. But here's the part people often forget. For all the talk, most fans still didn't truly understand what was about to happen. They had heard the stories, seen a few highlights, read the rankings. Yet nothing fully prepared people for the moment LeBron actually stepped onto the court against real competition. Because the second he did, reality hit harder than the hype ever could. LeBron was just 18 years old, technically still a teenager, fresh out of high school, but nothing about him looked, moved, or felt like a normal teenager. His physical presence alone had a way of stopping conversations mid-sentence. Broad shoulders that looked like they belonged to a veteran power forward, a thick, powerful chest, explosive legs that made him glide down the floor with a strange mix of speed and strength. Even experienced players noticed immediately that this wasn't something you saw every year. It looked like a grown professional athlete trapped inside the timeline of a high school senior. And yet the fascinating part of LeBron's story is that many of the players who would later become his rivals or teammates first met him long before the NBA lights ever turned on. One of those players was Carmelo Anthony.
On LeBron when you first faced him, were you? Like, did you see that this guy is going to be the chosen one? He's going to be one of the great players of all time?
I knew he had the potential. I didn't think he was going to be where he is today. No. I didn't think he was going to have that type of career. I mean, I knew the kid was good. He was very talented, but to think that he would be one of the greatest, arguably the greatest to play the game, no, not at the time. No, you don't see that.
But you guys faced each other, Orlando and the Cavs, on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
That was back.
He was a rookie.
Yeah.
He was a rookie at the time.
And what'd you think?
Again, the kid was good. The kid, at the time, I'm calling the kid because he was 18 years old at the time. But he was really good. But even then, I still didn't think, he was gonna be.
Melo once described the first time he crossed paths with LeBron during their high school days. At the time, the basketball world worked very differently. There were no constant highlight reels flooding the internet, no viral clips circulating every few minutes. If you wanted to know who the best high school players were, you had to rely on scouting reports, recruiting magazines, and word of mouth. One of the most famous of those reports was the Bob Gibbons Report. Inside that publication was a small section ranking the best players in the country. If your name appeared in that small box at the top, everyone in the basketball world noticed. Melo remembered seeing LeBron's name there and thinking the same thing many young competitors thought when they saw a new #1 prospect. I need to see this guy for myself. Eventually, their paths crossed during a major high school event around All-Star Weekend in Philadelphia.
It's the young, non-experienced, he came in as a shooting guard. Right, so he came in as a shooting guard. Getting dollar torched shit out of him at shooting guard. Then he grew.
Yeah.
Right. I remember we in the playoff, and no, that first year Antoine got him, right, and then we came into the playoffs and like he's posting up and he's taller than Antoine, and I had to whisper, "Hey, coach, I think did he grow? Does this motherfucker grow?" And it was like, I don't think so. And I was like, man, he bigger than them dudes now, man. And then it was like, put Jared on him. So we had to put Jared Jeffries on him, Jared 6'11". So we tried everything. Like, it was just one of those, and you can just see it like, yeah, if we're gonna get him, we gotta get him now, because the smarter he gets, the stronger he gets.
Future stars from around the country had gathered for a big matchup, and both players were staying at the same hotel. Melo recalled walking into the hotel and suddenly seeing LeBron. LeBron looked over and casually said something simple. "Yo, you Melo, right?" No big introduction, no dramatic moment, just two young players recognizing each other. What happened next was surprisingly normal for two future superstars. The night before the game, they ended up sitting on the steps outside the hotel for hours just talking. No cameras around them, no analysts breaking down their conversation, just two teenagers getting to know each other. Melo later remembered thinking something funny during that conversation. "I don't really know anything about you, and you don't really know anything about me." They talked about basketball, about where they came from, about the upcoming game, just kicking it like two competitors meeting for the first time. Neither of them fully understood it at the time, but that quiet conversation on those hotel steps was the beginning of one of the most famous rivalries and friendships the NBA would see for years to come.
LeBron, and how did his game improve and evolve over the years?
Man, I remember at 15 years old in Chicago, he was there. Like, Jordan was there, Barkley was a little older. He was just getting in shape. But Jordan was going to work. Michael Finley was there, Stackhouse was there, Antoine Walker was in his prime in 1999 or 2000, he was in his prime. So I see LeBron walk to the gym, everybody was talking about LeBron. I think he was on TV by this time also. So I see him, I didn't play against him his first game, but I watched him, I'm like, damn. 15, 16, I think he was there 2 years in a row, if I'm not mistaken. Then I went up against him, and he was on a fast break, coming full speed just like you do now. And I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna stop him because he's coming full speed. And he was like 225 at this time. So as I tried to grab him, he was still going up, so I put him on the floor. Right, so I put him on the floor, and I was like, wow. That was at 15. He was already ready. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if I didn't put him on the floor, he was going right through it. You know what I mean? And then playing against him, first game, he had 25 against me. 25 points, and that was when like, nobody was getting that much. You know what I'm saying? Like, not in my prime, and I was like, yo, this dude is the real deal. So I always gave it up to him, but when I played against him, I tried to compete. And then I remember him, he gave me 25, and he was like, is this your best defender? He said that to the crowd in Indiana. And I was heated, like I was so heated. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, this in my head, I'm like, yes.
From that first meeting, the connection between LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony came naturally. Melo later explained that it didn't take long for them to realize they had a lot in common. They weren't just two elite basketball prospects chasing the same dream. Their life stories looked very similar too. Both grew up in single-parent homes. Both came from difficult environments where nothing was handed to them. Growing up in neighborhoods where you had to mature quickly, where discipline and survival came before comfort. Those kinds of experiences tend to create a certain mindset, and when two young athletes recognize that in each other, the bond forms quickly. So when Melo talks about that moment, he often says the connection felt immediate, not because of rankings, hype, or basketball status. It came from something deeper, shared backgrounds, and the understanding that both of them had fought through similar challenges to get where they were. But while their personal stories were similar, what truly shocked people about LeBron during those early years was something much simpler: his body. Even before entering the NBA, LeBron looked physically different from almost everyone his age. His frame didn't resemble the typical high school player preparing for the next level. It looked more like a veteran football tight end who had already spent years in professional weight rooms. Thick shoulders, incredible strength, and explosive athletic ability that didn't look like potential strength waiting to develop.
When LeBron start playing each other and start developing a friendship?
So LeBron is one year
Below
younger
you.
than me. So we played, and when I get to Oak Hill, Bron and them had beat Oak Hill the previous year. And I'm like, yo, I gotta play against him. Like, it's on the schedule, we gotta make it happen. I knew nothing, I ain't never seen him, none of that. Because back then, he was a pamphlets, right?
Oh, man, we was talking about this before.
Like,
there's no internet, you didn't know who the motherfucker was till you seen him in the gym.
It was Bob Gibbons' report, you know what I'm saying? So whoever was in that box in the middle, whoever was in the box, that was the number one player. So that's who you going after at that point. So we get the jersey, and we playing in a primetime shootout, and he coming in the hotel, and we coming in the hotel, and he like, yo, you Melo? Like, you know, you Melo? I'm like, yeah. And we sat on the steps. It was All-Star Weekend in Philly, too. So we sat on the steps for hours the night before the game. Like, I don't know nothing about you, dog. You don't know nothing about me. And we sat there for hours just kicking and just talking, man. And we clicked from that moment, you know what I'm saying? We just felt like we had similar backgrounds, you know what I'm saying? You single-parent home, broken family, growing up in the hood, that was a similar story.
It looked like fully formed power. That distinction mattered a lot once he reached the NBA, because the league has a long tradition when it comes to rookies. Veterans always test them. It's almost like an unofficial rule. Hard bumps during drives, physical contact under the basket, aggressive defense early in the game. These moments are designed to send a message, welcome to the league. For most rookies, that adjustment period can be rough. But when players tried that approach against LeBron, something strange happened. It didn't work. Players expected a teenager to react like a teenager, maybe show frustration, maybe slow down after a few hard hits, maybe hesitate before attacking again. Instead, they would bump into him and feel like they had run straight into a wall. No recoil, no panic, no hesitation. LeBron would grab a rebound, push the ball down the floor, and suddenly he was attacking the defense again with the same calm focus. Sometimes even stronger than before. That's when experienced players began realizing something unusual was happening. Because these weren't inexperienced defenders reacting this way. These were seasoned professionals, guys who had already battled some of the best players the league had ever seen. And yet, when they faced this 18-year-old rookie, many of them instinctively took a small step back. Not out of fear exactly, but out of recognition. Recognition that this kid was not intimidated by anybody.
First shot I ever took in the game, I set a screen for Kai, slipped it. Kai threw me a float pass, and I thought I was wide open. So I'm like, I'm gonna get my first bucket, like I'm gonna calm down. And I tried to lay it up. He came, I don't know where Bryant came, he came to the fifth row. I didn't score to the second half. I didn't get my first bucket to the second half.
Was that your welcome to the NBA moment?
That was for sure my welcome to the NBA moment, my first.
And here's the fascinating part. That feeling never really disappeared. As the years passed, the NBA changed in many ways. Rules evolved. The pace of the game shifted. Entire generations of players entered the league and eventually retired. New stars emerged, new rivalries formed, and new eras began. But one thing stayed remarkably consistent. Young players who face LeBron today often describe the exact same feeling that veterans felt when he first arrived. Many of them grew up watching him on television. They saw the finals runs, the iconic dunks, the championships, the legendary moments that filled highlight reels for years. Those memories were part of their childhood. Then one day they check into an NBA game, and LeBron James is standing right across from them. Some players later admit their heart started racing in that moment. Others say they tried their best to look calm while everything inside them was going crazy. Because no matter how confident a player is, there's something surreal about suddenly competing against someone you grew up watching as a legend. Different eras, different generations of players, completely different styles of basketball. Yet the reaction when players first stand across from LeBron James somehow stays exactly the same. It didn't matter if you were a hardened veteran back in 2003 or a young rookie stepping onto the court 20 years later. That first moment facing him tends to hit people in a very similar way. Players describe it almost like a realization that suddenly clicks in their head.
Was in the 7th grade at AAU Nationals. I got that game on tape. And so it's always been funny to me when I've heard the outside noise on LeBron early in his career. Everybody was wanting him to be like Kobe and be like Jordan. And I was like, yeah, I don't understand. This dude was a point guard. And that's who I was matched up against. But he was a point guard who could jump out the gym. So on the tape, you see him diamond out, but then you also see him getting all this over the rim in the 7th grade, right? So funny story is, it was me, Indy EB, Kendrick Perkins, we all on the Houston Hoops. The very next year, we checking in the hotel for AAU Nationals. LeBron and his team is standing outside the hotel, and Bron had grown 5 or 6 inches. Big Perk was like, yo, is that the same nigga? And I was like, yo, that's the same dude. And we knew then it was a wrap, because everything that you see, the vision, the handling, the playmaking, he had all that at 6'2", 6'3". Now you telling me that this dude can do this at 6'6", 6'7". We knew it was over. That was before the Sports Illustrated article that named him the chosen one. We are.
Oh, that's really him. And once that moment happens, nobody forgets it. That's why the most interesting way to understand LeBron's impact isn't just through statistics or highlights. It's through the stories told by the players who actually faced him, legend by legend, player by player. First-hand moments where NBA careers collided with a force they weren't fully prepared for. And the perfect place to begin that story is with someone who has been connected to LeBron since the very beginning of his career, Carmelo Anthony. Both players entered the league together in the legendary 2003 NBA draft, one of the most talent-packed draft classes the league has ever seen. They arrived with massive expectations, enormous attention from the media, and the spotlight already shining directly on them. But Melo entered the NBA carrying his own reputation as well. Before turning professional, he had already led Syracuse University to a national championship. His scoring ability was already elite, his confidence was obvious, and his game looked perfectly suited for the NBA level. Melo wasn't intimidated by anyone. He believed he belonged from day one. So when he first started facing LeBron early in their careers, he approached the matchup like any confident young star would. At that time, LeBron was still being used in slightly different roles on the court. Early in his career, he sometimes played closer to the shooting guard position, handling the ball, but also spending time attacking from the wing. Melo remembers those early matchups clearly.
Christmas time, I think. I wasn't playing, so like my rookie, I didn't play that much. And I was driving to the game. I hadn't played in like 3 or 4 games before that. It's been a while. I was just, sitting down watching the games. And I'm driving to the game, talking to my dad. Lakers Celtics. They've been hyping this up all week, for real. We had practice on like a Monday, like this is the Lakers Celtics, like let's go, like we gotta win this game. I haven't played all week. I'm not playing today. Yeah, for real. I was like, bro, I said I'm not getting in. It's the end of the first quarter. I'm standing like in the back of the huddle, and I'm like watching Brad Stevens draw up a play, and I'm sitting there chilling, and he's like, Neesman, get JT.
Me?
Yeah. I said, for real, I was like, okay. So I take my shooting shirt off, I sit down. Once again, I have not played in like a week. So I get in, I go to the corner, I'm standing there waiting for the Lakers to come out. Lakers come out, LeBron runs straight to me. He does his little, little trot. So he does his little trot to me, and I was like, oh boy. So he does a little trot to me, I'm standing in the corner, play starts, JB's coming at me, I go to run at him to fake the back door. Yeah. Man, LeBron is like at the block, and he's like back door straight into his chest. And he was like, bro, you have not played. Like, you're not getting the ball first thing you come into the game.
No. Talking to him?
Bro, yeah.
He said that to you?
So I go through to the other side, play finishes, we go down again, boom, whatever. I play like my 4 or 5 minutes, I come out the game. Then LeBron's talking to my teammate. He's talking to my teammate because he was guarding him, and he was like, there was a timeout, he's standing in front of our bench, ball's on the other end of the floor. So he was like, this is what I'm gonna do to you. I'm gonna have the ball right, I'm gonna throw my hand up, I'm gonna throw it to the hand. I'm gonna put my right leg over yours, I'm gonna fade away, and it's gonna be a bucket. Right. About 30 seconds later, he had him right here. Throw it to the hand. Throw it to the hand. Boom. Bucket. Try to right back down. I said, oh.
And according to him, he wasn't exactly going easy on the rookie. In fact, Melo once joked about how those early battles went. He said that when LeBron was playing shooting guard early on, he really went at him offensively. Melo believed he could take advantage of the matchup and push the young player as much as possible. But something strange started happening as the seasons went on. LeBron kept changing. Not just his game, his size. Melo remembered a moment during the playoffs when something suddenly looked different. LeBron wasn't just playing on the perimeter anymore. He started posting up defenders inside, using strength and size in ways that didn't match how he looked just a short time earlier. That's when Melo had a moment of confusion. He actually turned to the bench and asked his coach something that sounded almost ridiculous. Did he grow? It wasn't just a joke either. From Melo's perspective, LeBron suddenly looked bigger than some of the players guarding him. Stronger, more powerful, like his body had evolved almost overnight. Melo remembered thinking something along the lines of, man.
And my first All-Star game in Philly. And, we in the locker room and, we talking to reporters and they was like, man, have y'all heard of this kid? The chatter was like, have you heard of this kid named LeBron James? Man, this kid he a high school phenom. He's so good, he could probably start in this All-Star game. And I was like, so I sat up and was like, what? I'm looking around, I'm like, they go AI, Kick Ticket, Shaq, Jordan. Like, this kid, I had to really sit up and say, it's a kid out there in high school this good. I was like, hold on. And they didn't have no Instagram, so I could just, let me see if you had to go see him.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of NBA guys was going out, flying out to see this play. Celebrities, rappers, Jay-Z and all them going out to see him play. So I'm like, man, this kid must be nice, but I don't think he that good, And then just to see pressure that was put on him coming into the league and to live up to those expectations, because they was like, he could be the greatest to ever play the game. And you like, man, they giving this kid this already? He came in with a nickname King out the jump. I ain't never seen that outside of Magic. Came in the league with the nickname. Like, usually you earn that while you in the league. He coming to the league, I was like, man, let's see what this is about. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going at him. I mean, I'm going at him early. We dropping each other off 40, boom, boom, boom. And I wasn't ready to call a young cat 21, 22 king. He gonna have to earn it.
Sure.
And so for him to live up to it and probably surpass the expectations, that's tough, because nobody in our league has ever had to deal with these type of...
He's bigger than those guys now. And that realization was one of the earliest hints that LeBron James wasn't going to stay the same player for very long. At a certain point, teams started realizing that normal defensive matchups simply weren't working against LeBron James. Players who were supposed to match up with him physically suddenly looked too small. Guards couldn't handle his strength, wings struggled with his size, and even bigger defenders had trouble keeping up with his speed, so coaches started experimenting. One adjustment Carmelo Anthony remembered clearly was when teams tried putting Jared Jeffries on him. Jeffries was about 6'11", long, athletic, and one of the bigger defenders available on the roster. The idea was simple. If LeBron was overpowering smaller players, then throw a much bigger body at him and see if that slows him down. Teams tried everything they could. Different matchups, different defensive schemes, more physical play, hard doubles, rotations designed specifically to cut off his drives. But even with all those adjustments, there was a growing realization spreading across the league. If you were going to stop LeBron, you needed to do it early, because everyone could see what was happening. Each season he looked stronger, smarter, more comfortable controlling the game. The combination of size, skill, and basketball IQ kept growing, and players understood something important. The longer he stayed in the league, the harder he was going to be to deal with.
LeBron played. So let me tell you a story. I remember seeing LeBron for the first time. He was doing a special. Let's say it was on a network. And in this special, he was a junior, and it was like coming out this junior season. He had this little nappy fro and baby face, squeaky voice. And I remember listening to the interview and hearing him say like if he can challenge the rule to enter the NBA after junior, like he would. And I remember thinking, this cocky little what? He could leave high school after junior and go play in the NBA? And then he had the game on ESPN with Dick Vitale, just that whole, the first high school game that we seen. And I tuned in like everybody else to just see what this guy was all about. 3 minutes in watching him play, I was like, oh, okay, this dude good. He good. Like he's on another level. He was a star. Like to have that moment, to be able to perform like that when this moment was so big and he made it look so easy.
It's funny though, cause
does he call you grandfather?
I was nowhere getting no minutes on the court at this particular game. I get in the game though. It's a tie game. With about 4 seconds on the clock. LeBron James, you remember the pass he got in Washington? Got one of them type of passes in Washington, faded, turned around, hit the game winner, yeah. He did that same thing in Boston. And when they subbed me in, I had that little 4 seconds, and I sat right back down, right? So it was like, damn, but I was so ready for that moment. I was so just geeked up, like, cause the way they was talking about LeBron, he this. And when I came in and got the stop, I'm like, when I saw it go in, I look up, I say, good DTA. Hey, he took his mouthpiece out, looked back and said, man, I just missed.
That realization created a strange sense of urgency for players who faced him in those early years. If we're going to figure him out, it has to be now. because once his experience caught up with his physical gifts, the matchup would become even more difficult. And according to Melo, the moment you actually saw LeBron up close, the conversation about potential stopped being theoretical. You could read scouting reports all day, watch highlights, and hear analysts talk about him. But once you were on the floor with him, it became obvious. LeBron didn't need time to grow into the league. He arrived ready. The strength was already there. The balance through contact looked natural. Defenders could bump him, push him, lean into him, and he still kept moving forward like nothing had happened. Melo wasn't shocked in a starstruck way. Instead, he described the feeling more like trying to process what he was seeing in real time. When a player your age is already performing with the physical force and calm confidence of a veteran, it forces you to rethink what you expected. And that moment of realization, when players understood that LeBron wasn't developing into something special, but had already arrived as something different.
Rookie year. 2004.
Different. Like I gave him a nickname. I gave him a nickname Heaven Sent.
Yeah.
Like God said you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't get that good
early.
Early, right out the gate. 18 coming out of high school. Ain't nobody think. I was like, nah, man, he can't be that good. He gonna be good in the league, but shit, man. I'm in practice with this boy. I'm like, woo. He was the real deal. And I'm talking
as a baby.
As a baby, he knew it. He knew he had a great feel for it. Athletic, get where he wanted to get. You know what I mean? He was different. That's why I used to call it Heaven Sent. Like God just said, you dog.
Yeah.
The build, athletically.
60 and change.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Is really where this story starts to unfold. Because Melo wasn't the only one who noticed. The next player in this story came from a completely different personality type. A player known for intensity, energy, and relentless effort every time he stepped on the floor. No shortcuts, no slowing down. Every possession was treated like a battle. When he first ran into LeBron James, one detail stood out immediately. The physical play that usually rattled rookies didn't move LeBron at all. Every bump, every hard hit, every aggressive defensive check that veterans often use to test younger players, LeBron simply kept attacking, like none of it mattered. And the funny part is that this particular player didn't even expect to face LeBron that night. At the time, he wasn't getting many minutes in the game. He was mostly sitting on the bench, watching the action unfold, but eventually he checked into the game. And suddenly, he was standing on the court across from LeBron James, realizing he was about to experience the matchup for himself. Late game moments are where reputations get tested. The clock is running down, the arena is loud, and every player on the floor knows exactly who the ball is going to. In situations like that, there's no hiding. Everyone in the building understands the play before it even begins.
It was like never seen before in the NBA. And, you know, I'm a pro, I'm in the league, I've been to college, whatever. You know, we hear about LeBron. We saw him play a couple times in high school, and he looks terrific against the high school competition. So you're like, oh, he's going to be able to play and compete. We get him on campus to get him to practice. He got the ball. He drives down the baseline, and he jumps over Milt Palacio. Like, leaped over him, spread his legs, laid the ball in, and I'd never seen that before in person. I heard stories about MJ, I heard stories about Dr. J, but I'm witnessing an 18-year-old kid jump over a 6'5" point guard and lay the ball in, and he took off from outside the paint. And then on top of that, right away we knew that he was our best player. He passed the ball, he got by people, he wanted to draw on the defense and kick it. He made the game so much easier and so much fun to play with. Right away we knew he was our best player.
I remember the first run. I went down there, you know, and when I went there, you know, they give me the guys, you go in the gym, they give me the little side guys, and you know, they keep their little crew. Right. They crew, they high school team, they went to state, damn near 4 years in a row, won 3 of them. Like, they really know how to play with each other and play. So, you know, I get the rest of the guys, you know, they play on my team, I'm going LeBron. I'm going at him. He ain't really stopping me or nothing like that, but it was something about him, just the way he played, the way they played, and how he orchestrated. And then it was like the last game we was playing, and he was at the top of the key, and he tried to pull me back. And I got all up on it, I'm on it. He shot the 3. I passed him. I put my hand on the ball. He adjusted,
cash.
And then went in for game. I said, yeah. He one of them.
So you knew he was different as soon as that happened?
Yeah, when that Pacific play, cause my homeboy was there. Cause I used to call my homeboys back home. It's like, man, it's this dude named LeBron James. He probably the best high school player I ever seen. No, he ain't, G. No, he ain't, G. He ain't better than you, G. I ain't never seen nobody better. I'm talking about arguing with my own people about me and somebody else.
Yeah.
I'm like, nah, this dude was throwing it between his legs, dunking that motherfucker.
And for years in the NBA, one name kept showing up in those moments, LeBron James. Players remember those situations clearly because the tension is different. There might be only a few seconds left on the clock, one possession, one shot, the entire game sitting on that moment. Several players have talked about those situations where LeBron received the ball with almost no time remaining and still managed to create something dangerous. Sometimes he would catch a difficult pass, fade away from the defender, turn midair, and release the shot before the buzzer even sounded. It became one of those sequences players across the league started recognizing. You knew what was coming, but stopping it was another story. One veteran who remembers those moments vividly is Kevin Garnett, one of the most intense competitors the NBA has ever seen. Garnett built his entire career on energy, physical play, and relentless defense. Every possession was serious to him, every matchup was personal. So when he first faced LeBron in those early years, he approached it the same way he approached everyone else. Full intensity. Garnett once described a moment late in a game when the clock was running down and LeBron ended up with the ball in his hands for the final play. Garnett had been waiting for that opportunity, ready to prove that all the hype surrounding the young star might be exaggerated. He wanted that defensive moment. When the play unfolded, Garnett stepped up and contested the shot aggressively. From his perspective, he had done everything right. The defense was there, the contest was strong, and for a brief second, he thought he had forced a miss. The ball came off the rim, and Garnett reacted immediately. He looked up and said something along the lines of, "Good defense." In his mind, the stop was made. But LeBron simply pulled his mouthpiece out, looked back calmly, and said something that stuck with Garnett. "Man, I just missed that one." That response surprised him because it didn't sound like frustration. It didn't sound like relief either. It sounded more like a player acknowledging that the shot normally goes in. Moments like that gave players a glimpse of something unusual about LeBron early in his career. The confidence wasn't loud or emotional. It was calm, almost matter of fact. And coming from someone as competitive as Kevin Garnett, the recognition carried weight. KG has said many times that he saw flashes of greatness right away. Maybe not the full picture of what LeBron would eventually become, but enough to understand that the teenager standing in front of him was operating on a different level. Because when a player known for intensity recognizes that kind of talent, it usually means something real is happening. And Garnett wasn't the only legend who had that reaction. For some younger stars entering the league later, the experience was even stranger. They grew up watching LeBron on television. They studied his moves, replayed his highlights, and imagined what it would feel like to compete against him one day. Then suddenly, that moment arrived. Instead of watching him on a screen, they were standing on the same court guarding him during real NBA games. The energy of the crowd, the lights, the pressure of the stage, everything felt different when the player you grew up watching was suddenly your opponent. But even some of the biggest legends had to see LeBron in person before fully believing the hype. One of those legends was Kobe Bryant. Kobe had heard all the headlines long before he ever shared a court with LeBron. The hype was everywhere. Analysts were talking about a teenager who might become the future of the league, and to Kobe, that kind of praise usually required proof. He wasn't someone who believed in hype easily.
Against him in the actual game, he was so much bigger and stronger than everybody at that position. And me and Tayshaun was sitting on the bench because, you know, at that time he was a pass-first type of guy. He still is a pass-first type of guy. And we were like, hey, you know what, we better beat up on him now because once he figures it out, we ain't gonna have a chance. And in that playoff game, he kind of figured it out and had 25 straight points on us.
Shot clock to 6. Goes behind the back. And the game is tied at 104.
That's too good right there.
I looked at Tay, I said, Tay, bro, he figured it out, man. That might have been our last time the year before that of beating up on LeBron James because now this kid is about to take over the league.
I come in one time and being in Cleveland, being picked up one of my friends. Where we going? You gotta see this kid. I know, man, I'm hungry. No, you gotta see this kid. What kid? I'm like, damn, he's on Sports Illustrated already? So we pull in the gym in Cleveland, and it's packed. And I see this kid, and I haven't seen nobody dominate high school like that since me. And I said to myself,
But the first time Kobe saw LeBron up close, his size, his balance, the way he carried himself on the floor, the conversation changed quickly. The respect came early. And once Kobe recognized what he was seeing, that respect stayed there for the rest of LeBron's career. Because sometimes all it takes is one look for a legend to recognize another one in the making. Throughout the early 2000s, the NBA was filled with fearless competitors, players who weren't intimidated by hype, headlines, or scouting reports. The league at that time was tough, physical, and full of personalities who believed they could beat anyone on any given night. So when LeBron James entered the league as an 18-year-old rookie, most veterans approached the situation the same way they always did. They were curious, but skeptical. That plenty of young players had entered the league with big expectations before. Some lived up to them, many didn't. So when people started calling LeBron the future of basketball before he even played his first NBA season, a lot of players naturally wanted to see the proof themselves. One player who remembers studying LeBron closely during those early years was Dwyane Wade. Wade would eventually become one of LeBron's closest friends and teammates, but the first time he really watched him up close was during LeBron's rookie season. And according to Wade, something about the young star stood out immediately. He once said that LeBron was simply different. In fact, Wade even gave him a nickname early on. Heaven Sent. The meaning behind that nickname was simple. Wade explained it as if LeBron had arrived in the league with gifts that didn't usually show up in someone that young. The combination of size, athleticism, vision, and confidence felt unusual for an 18-year-old who had just come straight from high school. Most rookies need time to adjust to the NBA. But with LeBron, the adjustment seemed almost non-existent. Wade admitted that when he first heard all the hype surrounding LeBron before seeing him play regularly, he was skeptical like many others. It sounded exaggerated. Surely the league would slow him down a little once the real competition started. Then Wade actually saw him on the floor, and the reaction was immediate. In practice sessions and games, Wade noticed how comfortable LeBron looked controlling the game. Even as a teenager, he had a natural feel for where to move, when to attack, and how to read defenses. His athleticism allowed him to get anywhere he wanted on the court, but what impressed players even more was how easily he understood the flow of the game. That combination is rare. Wade later explained that what surprised him most was that LeBron seemed aware of it even at a young age. Not in an arrogant way, but in the way a player moves when he understands his own abilities. He knew he could impact the game, and because of that, Wade kept repeating the same word when describing him back then: different. That's why the nickname stuck in his mind. To Wade, LeBron looked like a player who had arrived with something special already built in. But Wade wasn't the only star who noticed it early. Some players experienced LeBron's presence from across the court. Others experienced it directly when they had to guard him. And when that happened, the physical difference often shocked them. One legendary guard who talked about this was Allen Iverson. Iverson spent his career competing against some of the toughest defenders and most athletic players in basketball history. Size differences never intimidated him, but when he first saw LeBron on the court, one thing stood out immediately. LeBron didn't look like the other players. He looked bigger, stronger, and faster than almost everyone around him. Iverson later said it very clearly. LeBron was simply built differently. The strength, the speed, the coordination, it all came together in a way that didn't match the age listed next to his name. And when players like Iverson recognize something like that, people tend to listen. Because even some of the most dominant big men the NBA has ever seen had the same reaction after facing LeBron. They walked away realizing they had just encountered a player who wasn't developing into greatness. He was already on the path. When Shaquille O'Neal first saw LeBron James as a rookie, the reaction was immediate. Shaq had already played against some of the most dominant athletes in basketball history. He understood size, power, and physical presence better than almost anyone. But when he looked at LeBron, he didn't just notice the body, he noticed the presence, the calm confidence, the way he carried himself on the floor, the strange feeling that the rhythm of the game started shifting whenever he had the ball. Shaq later explained that what stood out wasn't just LeBron's strength or athletic ability, it was how naturally the game seemed to move around him. For a teenager, that kind of control was rare, and Shaq understood it right away. This kid isn't normal, but Shaq wasn't the only veteran who came to that conclusion. Another player known for his physical defense and fearless mentality had his own early encounter with LeBron. Ron Artest, later known as Meta Sandiford Artest, built his reputation as one of the toughest defenders in the league. He never backed down from matchups, no matter how talented the opponent was. Physical play was part of his identity. So when he first lined up against LeBron early in his career, Artest approached the matchup the way he always did. He got physical, hard contact, strong bumps, the kind of defense designed to test whether a young player could handle the intensity of NBA competition. Veterans often use those moments to send a message, but the reaction he expected never came. LeBron didn't get frustrated, he didn't complain, he didn't slow down, he simply absorbed the contact and kept playing like nothing had happened. The physical play that usually disrupted younger players barely affected him at all. That's when Artest realized something important. This wasn't a normal rookie. But the story actually goes back even earlier than the NBA. Long before the league, before national television games and sold-out arenas, there were already players who had seen LeBron's potential developing in youth tournaments. One player who remembered it clearly talked about facing LeBron all the way back in AAU basketball, when they were still kids. The memory stuck because of how quickly things changed. At one point, they faced LeBron during middle school competition. Then one summer later, when the teams crossed paths again, something looked completely different. The kid from Akron, Ohio, had come back bigger, stronger, and noticeably faster. And even at that age, he was already separating himself from the rest of the players on the court. Then the story jumps forward again to a completely different perspective. Imagine being a young NBA player entering the league years later. You grew up watching LeBron on television. You studied his moves, replayed his highlights, and saw the legendary moments that defined an era of basketball. Then suddenly you're standing across from him in a real game. That moment feels completely different. Watching a superstar on TV is one thing. Guarding him in person on the biggest stage in basketball is something else entirely. Several younger players have described that exact experience. They entered the league confident in their abilities, believing they were ready for any challenge. But the first time they actually tried to defend LeBron, they realized how different it felt. The speed was surprising, the strength was real, and the awareness of the game, the way he seemed to read plays 2 steps ahead, made defending him even harder. Some players realized it during games, others noticed it during practices. One veteran once described practicing with LeBron when he was still a rookie, and immediately understanding that this wasn't an ordinary 18-year-old entering the league. The mindset already looked professional, the body looked prepared, the confidence felt natural. Then there were the teammates who saw him every single day during those early Cleveland Cavaliers seasons. One teammate talked about the non-stop work ethic, the hours of preparation, the repetition, the focus on improving every part of his game. Another noticed how easily LeBron blended into a locker room full of experienced veterans, carrying himself like someone who had already been there for years. And again, the same realization kept appearing. This wasn't a normal rookie. One defender even tried testing him early with extra physical play, hoping to send a message the way veterans often do. After a few possessions, he realized the effort wasn't working. LeBron simply laughed it off. That was the moment he understood. Built different. So now the question turns to you. What's your favorite LeBron James story? The first moment you realize he wasn't just another talented player, but something different. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you never miss the next one.